This conference will now be recorded.
Right. So yesterday we understood what is this S4 HANA and what are the different modules in S4 HANA.
So
Okay.
still we are getting some background noise.
We are getting background noise. 1 second.
Sudhanshu route.
Yeah, Sudhanshu, can you please select what computer audio radio button in the audio section? Sudhanshu. 1 second, please. Just hold on. Sudhanshu. Yes, still you are getting the disturbance, Shiva.
Uh, yeah. Yes.
What about others? Is it fine to others or
Yeah, sir, I am fine. This is Jagat.
fine? No? Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Shiva, I think you logged in twice.
Oh,
Can you
is it?
disconnect?
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Can you
will exit
disconnect
and
one?
then I'll log in again.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Okay. So let's start. So yesterday we understood the role of what ABAP HANA consultant related to what S4 HANA. Okay. So we understood that as an ABAP HANA consultant, okay, we are responsible for what designing the HANA database. Okay, designing the HANA database means what are the different database objects are there. We are going to create and manage those particular database objects. On top of that particular database objects, we will be developing what reports, CDS views, ALU reports, AMDPs, okay, HANA modeling views, which will make use of this database objects. Okay. Right. So why we are going for this HANA database to improve the performance of the applications, to improve the performance of the applications. Okay. Right. Now let me show you one simple example. See how this HANA is different from other databases. So all of you know ALV reporting. Okay. So try to understand. We already know ALV reporting in our normal ABAP. Okay. So I assume that I want to develop an ALV report using what classes concept. Okay. So what is the procedure we'll follow in order to develop the ALV reporting using classes? First, we'll be creating what? We'll create a module pull screen. 1 second, someone is again. Sudhanshu, can you please mute your speakers? Sudhanshu. Yeah, thank you. Right. So what is the procedure we'll follow in our classical ABAP? Okay, in our classical ABAP, when I say classical ABAP here, I am referring to what? Non-HANA database. It can be Oracle database, it can be MySQL, SQL Server, whatever it is. Okay. So what is the procedure we'll follow? We'll create what? One module pull screen. Try to understand. We'll create one module pull screen. Then on top of that screen, what we'll do? We'll place something called as what? Custom control. Okay, we'll place the custom control on top of the screen, on top of the screen. Then what we will do in the PBO event, in the PBO event module, what we will do, we will link something called as what custom container with what custom control. We will link the custom container with custom control, and then we will link the ALV grid. We will link the ALV grid with what custom container. So this custom container, it is represented by what? A class. What is that class? CL underscore GUI underscore custom underscore container. And this ALV grid is represented by a class called as CL underscore GUI underscore ALV underscore grid. Okay, so this is a linking process we'll do. Then what we'll do? we will write the select query. Okay, we'll execute the select query to read what? Data from what? Database into what? What are the data we read? That data will come and sit in what? Some internal table. Then what we will do? We will generate some field catalog kind of thing. Okay, we'll generate the field catalog, and if required, we'll what? Generate the layout also. Then what we'll do? We will display the we'll display the internal table data in the ALV grid. How do you display in the CLGY ALV grid? We have one instance method called as set table for first display. So what I'm trying to show is in our normal ABAP, when we are developing the ALV report using classes, we must follow this particular procedure. Okay, compulsory you have to follow this particular procedure. So what you have to understand in case of normal ABAP, we are executing the select query, which the select query request will be sent to the database. The database is going to return the data. Whatever the data we are going to return from the database server, it will come and sit in the internal table. Okay, where this internal table will be created? This will be created in what? Application server. Okay, so once the data is stored in the internal table, what we may do, we may process your internal table. You'll process the internal table data. When I say processing the internal table data, I may sort the data, or I may do some calculations in that internal table, or I may delete some duplicate data, or I may modify some data. I'll do some kind of processing. Okay. Then what we'll do, we'll generate the field catalog, and then we'll display the processed internal table data in the ALV grid. So what you have to understand in this is the entire processing is happening at what? At the application server level. At the application server level. Now, if you come to the ANA database, okay, the entire processing will be carried out at what? ANA database level, so that we can make use of the features of what? ANA database. Okay, it contains some features like what? In-memory database. It supports both column store and what? Row store concept, and it supports something called as massive parallel processing. We don't know those things at this time, but it will make use of the database features, ANA database features, and improves the performance of the application. So what I want to do now is, I want to develop a simple ALV report. I want to develop a simple ALV report, and we'll understand how it is different in non-ANA database and ANA database. This is a non-ANA database which we know. Now I want to develop the same ALV report using what? ANA database. So let's see. So what is the main agenda of ABAP HANA consultant? We should write the code in such a way that the entire code should be pushed to what? ANA database. We need to follow which approach? Code to data approach. What is this code to data approach? The ABAP code, whatever we write, we have to push it to what? ANA database, so that the code gets executed in what? ANA database, so that we can leverage the features of what? ANA database, which will improve the performance of your application. Okay, so right. So let me try to develop a simple ALV report related to what? ANA database. Okay, so that the entire code will be pushed to what? ANA database. Let me check whether the server is available. 1 second. I'm just trying to connect to the server which contains ANA database. Okay. So you can see here, yesterday I told you what are the development we do it in this ABAP HANA. Okay, if you want to develop the reports, I can use ANA Studio. Okay, you can see here ANA Studio I can use, or I can also use what? SAP GUI. So as of now, I'm trying to develop a report now. So I'll be using SAP GUI only. Later on, we'll come to what? ANA Studio. Okay, so leave this ANA Studio. I'll be using normal SAP GUI only. So using this SAP logon pack, there is SAP GUI. I'll try to connect to my S4 system. I'll try to connect to the S4 system. So all the S4 systems will be what? Having what database? ANA database. I'll just try to log on. Okay, so welcome to the IDS S4 HANA system. Let me provide the credentials. Yeah, okay. So if you see a system status, What is this? A database system is what? HDB, HANA database. So my requirement is what? I want to develop the ALV report which has to display me some data. So for example, let me go to ABAP dictionary. Yeah, Rajagopal, I'll come to that point, please. Okay, just hold on. I'll show you the version also here. Right, so I'll go to SC11. Okay, so you need not worry about the version. Okay, so any version we use almost 90 to 95% ABAP HANA consultant concept will remain what same. Okay, if it is related to functional things, yes, there will be change in the features, but development wise, almost 90 to 95% the concept will remain same. Right, so I went to what SC11. Let me take one table here, table S flight. Okay, so we know that we have a table called as S flight. Okay, this table has got how many fields? It has got around what 14 fields. Do we have any data in this table? Yeah, I'm having some 357 records. Okay, so my requirement is I want to develop an ALV report. Okay, I want to develop an ALV report which has to display the data from this particular S flight table. So if it is a non-HANA database, what you will do in case of non-HANA database is first we will be declaring what internal table. Okay, so assume that I want all the 14 fields. So you'll create something like this. Try to understand. Types begin of ty underscore something what S flights. Okay, since I want the all the fields of the table, also what include type, what is the structure name S flight, then you'll close the types declaration. Types end of what ty underscore S flight. So I created what one types declaration. Then you may declare one internal table data t underscore flights type table of what ty underscore S flight. So based on my types declaration, I would create one internal table. Then how do you write the select query? Select, I want all the fields now, so I'll say star, select star from what is the database table S flights into table, what is the internal table t underscore what flights. Okay, this internal table gets created in what application server. So we'll retrieve the data from the database server. That retrieved data will come and sit in what internal table, and this internal table data you'll do some processing, and that processed data will display it in the ALV grid by using some standard method. Now I want to do the same thing in what HANA database. Okay, I want to develop this ALV report. So in what related to HANA database, we have something called as ALV IDA, integrated data access. Integrated data access. So by using this ALV IDA framework, okay, we can develop the ALV reports in what HANA database. So let me create one executable program. Observe the change. Okay, I'll just open this ABAP editor. I'll give the object name as something Z ALV report. Some title will give type of program as usual. What is that? Executable program. So what is the agenda now? What is the database we are using here? HANA database. So since it is HANA database, we should write the ABAP code in such a way that the code should get executed in what? HANA database. We need to push our business logic to the HANA database. Okay, so you can see the version details here. This is the release 2.0.0.0.1 to all those things. You can see the further details. I can just click on that. Okay, there are the different releases. Okay, install the software component versions, install the product versions. This is S4 HANA on premise. Okay, so this is released somewhere in what is the version release I'm using here? The release which is released in what? Uh, October 2016. This 1610 indicates what? October 2016. Okay, so the support pack is what? 01. SAP S4 HANA this released, whatever the version I'm using here, this is released in what? October 2016. Okay, so done. So I want to develop the ALV report using what? ALV IDA concept. So just try to understand. You may not understand this completely, but see the technique here. I'll just create one class. Okay, I'll create one custom class. Okay, yeah, in the custom class, I'll create one in the public section. I'll create one user defined method. Let me give the method name as something generate underscore ALV. Then I'll take the protected section. Okay, I'll take one method like display. These are all the user defined methods. Okay, then what I'll do is let me go to class builder. Okay, so in our classical ABAP, if you take this custom container, okay, custom container is represented by which class? CL underscore GUI underscore custom underscore what? Container. CL underscore GUI underscore custom underscore container. Similarly, if you take this ALV grid is represented by which class? CL underscore GUI underscore ALV underscore what? ALV underscore grid. Now, in case of this ANA database, if you go to the class builder, let me go to the class builder, we have an interface. What is the T code for class builder? SE24. Let me go to SE24. Yeah, we have an interface if underscore SALV underscore GUI underscore table underscore. We have many interfaces and many classes. So see here, what is this? If underscore SALV underscore GUI underscore table IDA. Let me display this. If I go to the properties, yeah, see the description here. ALV with what? Integrated data access. ALV with IDA. IDA stands for what? Integrated data access. So why I'm opening this interface is, if you go to this interface, okay, one second. One second, please. Yeah. So just observe here. In this particular interface, if underscore SALV underscore GUI table IDA, we have an instance method. We have an instance method called as full screen. Okay, I need to call this particular instance method. See the signature of this method. If I go to parameters, it is returning me object of some other interface. What is this interface? If underscore SALV underscore GUI full screen IDA. If I double click on this, in this interface, we have a method called as display. So this is the method which is responsible for what? Displaying the data in what? ALV format. You can compare this method similar to what method? In our normal classical ABAP, we have the method what? Set table for first display, na? Which is part of the class CLGY ALV grid. Similar to that method, here we have to use which method? Display method. So you can see the description here. Show the data on the UI, show the data on the user interface. So what I'll do is, this is the interface. Let me just take this interface. I'll just create the reference for this particular interface. It's somewhere here. I'll say data underscore ALV type ref2. What is the interface? If underscore SALV underscore GUI underscore table ID. Done. Okay, so my class definition contains how many methods? Two methods. Let me implement these two methods. LCL underscore ALV implementation. Done. Okay. So what are the methods here? One is generate underscore ALV. See, we are trying to understand code push down approach. We are trying to push our code to what? ANA database. So one of the technique is what? This ALV IDEA report. So let me provide some dummy implementation as of now. We call this as what? Null implementation. Opening the method and closing the method is called as what? Null implementation. Then I will say method display what? End method. So I declared some two user defined methods and I implemented what? Both the methods. Null implementation. Done. Okay, so as of now, when I do syntax check, I don't have any errors. I don't have any errors. Now what I'll do is, yeah, somewhere here in the start of selection, try to understand what is my class name, LCL underscore ALV. Let me create the object. Why I need to create the object? Both these methods are what methods? This is also instance method, and this is also what instance methods. Okay, how do we access the instance components? Only by using what? Objects. Okay, that is the reason I'll try to instantiate my class. I'll try to create the object for my class. So data will be type ref2 LCL underscore what ALV. I'll create the object. So object is created. Now what I'll do? I'll try to call this instance method generate underscore ALV. So can I call this method outside? Yes, I can call because it is a public method. Public components can be accessed outside the class. Since it is an instance method, I must access it only by using what? Object. So I'll say call method ob of what is the method name? Generate underscore ALB. So as of now, I have not written any business logic in this particular method. Okay. So if I execute, nothing will happen. I will not get any result. Now let me write the actual business logic. So just see this. Just try to focus. Yeah. So in case of our classical ABAP, how do you develop the AV report? This is the process we'll take. We'll take the custom control, and inside the PBO event, we'll write this logic to link the custom container with control and ALV grid with what? Custom container. Here what I have to do is, just now I've shown you, how do you display the ALV grid? We have to use, okay, in this interface, we have one method called as what? Full screen method. Okay, we have a method called as full screen method. Okay, inside this full screen method, inside this full screen method, if you see the signature here, okay, if you see the signature of this full screen method, it is returning the object of what? This interface. And inside this interface, we have an instance method called as display. So what is the understanding is, at the end I need to call which method? Display method. Okay, this display method is what method? Instance method. How to access instance method? By using the object. And already we know in our object oriented, we cannot create the objects for what? Interfaces. So what I'll do is, just observe here, we have one class. Again, if you go to class builder, try to understand, we have a class. What is the class name? CL underscore SALV underscore GUI underscore table underscore IDA. If I display this class, see the properties of this class. It's a private class. It's a private class. Means I cannot create the object. What is the description here? ALV with integrated data access factory class. It's a factory class done. Now inside this class, try to understand. Inside this class, if I go to methods tab, yeah, we have one method here, create method. Okay, what is this method? Static method. Already we know in our object oriented, static methods can be accessed both by using object as well as by using what? Class name. So I can call this method by using what? Class name. Can I call it outside? Yes, it is public. I can call it. What is the description? Create ALV with integrated data access. So before calling any method, what we will do, we will check the signature of the method. I mean to say, we'll check the parameters. So if you see this create method, if I go to parameters, good. See, there is one mandatory parameter. There is a mandatory importing parameter. What is this? IV underscore table underscore name. Type what? Database table. It is expecting what? Database table. It is expecting the dictionary structure. Okay. And what it is doing, just observe here. It is returning me. See this, there is a returning parameter. It is returning me the object of which interface? If underscore SALV underscore GUI underscore table underscore IDA. So I am interested to receive this parameter. So in case if you want to receive this parameter, I require the reference of this interface. That is the reason I declared one reference here. What is this? Inside my class only, I declare one reference, data o underscore LV type ref to what? So and so. So let me call that method. It's a static method. I can call it by using what? Class name. Does it have any exceptions? Okay. It might raise the exception from so and so classes. It might raise the exception from so classes. So since it is a global method, I can make use of what? Pattern. So I'll go to pattern here. So what is the first step I'm going to do here? Get the ALV object. Try to understand. Get the ALV object. What is this method is doing? This method, create method, is taking the database table name as input and returning me the object of which interface, so and so interface. Already we know in object oriented, returning parameters are always optional. If you are interested, we can receive, otherwise we can ignore. I am interested to receive. It is returning me the object of interface now. So in order to receive that object, we require the reference now. That's the reason I declare the reference here. Inside my class, I declare this reference as a component of that class. So get the ALU object. I'll use the pattern because it's a global method. I can make use of the pattern. I'll go to pattern, ABAP objects pattern. Okay, so since it's the static method, I can call it directly by using the class name CL underscore SALV underscore GUI underscore table underscore what IDA. Right, so let me go to the method. When I browse for the methods, we have 4 methods. I'm interested as of now to call which method? Create method. Done. Continue. Yeah, you can see here it is proposing the try and catch because it might raise a exception. So here, what is this method is doing? It is taking the table name as input. What is my agenda? I want to get the data from which table? S flight table. I want to get all the records, all the 357 records. I want to retrieve. So let me directly give the table name. So try to understand the changes in this ALV idea compared with the classical ALV. S flight done. These are any optional. I am not interested. Returning becomes what? Receiving. It is returning me the object of an interface. No? Already declare the reference also O underscore what? ALV. Done underscore LV. And good programming is always better to handle the exception. So I'll handle the exception so that we can avoid the runtime error. So here I'll say, I'll just give some user defined exception message, database connection error, type what? What else? Message, table not supported error, type I. Then there is another exception. I'm just providing the user defined information message. So I'm handling the exceptions. Done. Okay. So done. So what I did in this method, I'm getting the ALV object. How to get the ALV object? Just pass the database table name as input. It returns the object of that particular interface. I'm receiving it. Done. Now what I'll do is, there is another method in my class now. What is that method? Display method. Wantedly I declare this in which section? Protected section. So already we know protected components cannot be accessed outside. So since it is protected, since I cannot access it outside, what I'll do is, I got the object here now. So how do you check whether the object is received or not? If O underscore ALV is what? Not initial. If O underscore ALV is what? Not initial. I can say like this, not initial is what? Not empty. If O underscore ALV not initial, or directly I'll say if O underscore ALV is bound, is bound, what I'll do, I'll display the ALV. So see the technique here. I'll just write the comment to display the ALV. So that logic, the display logic, what I'll do is, I'll try to write it in another method. What is that method I created here? Display method. So I'll try to call this method. Since I cannot call it outside because it is protected, I'll call it through other methods. So somewhere here I'll say call method what? Display. Call method display done. End if end method, that's all. So now let us write the logic inside what? Display method. So just try to understand. I got the object of that interface now. So if you go back to this class, for this method, for this create method, I am passing the database table name as input, returns me the object of this interface. I received that object now. Let me go to this interface and double click on this. Okay, this is my interface. In this interface, I need to call which method? Full screen method. It's an instance method. How do you access instance methods? By using what? Object. In the previous step, I got the object. So if I call the full screen method, what is the signature of this method? Yeah, you can see now. This method is returning me object of which interface? Some other interface. If underscore SALV underscore GUI underscore full screen underscore IDE. So I'm interested to receive this. See the technique here. I'll debug, then it will be very much clear. Get the reference of what? Full screen mode, data O underscore mode, type ref2, so and so done. Now let me call that method. What is the object I got in the previous step? O underscore ALV. So I'll go to pattern. What is this? O underscore ALV. Inside this, what is the interface? If underscore SALV underscore GUI table IDA. In this, what is the method I need to call? Full screen method. Activate the full screen mode. And just call this full screen method. Done. It might raise some exception. That's why it is proposing try and catch. So here, R1 underscore full screen equal to what is the reference I declared? O underscore mode. Again, if it raises any exception, control goes to what? Catch block. I'm just handling that exception here. Message, what is this? IDA contract violation. Type what? I. Done. Yeah, the final step is if O underscore mode is what? Bound. If O underscore mode is bound, the final step is, so what I got in the previous step, I got the object of what? This interface. I received that object now. When I call the full screen method, it is returning me the object of so and so interface. I received that object. Inside this interface, we have an instance method called as what? Display. What is the description? Show the data on the UI. Show the data on the UI. Does it have any parameters? No parameters. Does it have any exceptions? No exceptions. Okay, so it doesn't have any parameters, doesn't have any exceptions. So I'll directly try to call it manually. I'll not use any pattern. So here I'll say display the what? Final data on the UI. Display the final data on the UI. So what is the object I got? O underscore mode. What is the method I need to call? What is the method we need to call? Display method. The name of the method is, it's a what method? Instance method. How do we access instance components? By using what? Object only. So that's the reason I'm accessing by using the object. Done. That's all. Yeah, I believe it's completed. Let me check the result. No syntax error done. So you can observe here, the thing we need to understand is, in our classical ALV reporting, we need to write the select query. We need to declare the internal table before that. We need to get the data into the internal table. If you require any processing, you have to process it, and then we have to generate the field catalog layout, and then we'll display the internal table data. Here I'm not writing any select query. Remember, I'm not writing any select query. Directly I followed some standard steps, and I'm trying to generate the ALV report. Let me execute. I'll say F8. Good. Okay, so I got the ALV report here. Okay, how to control this toolbar, how to add our own buttons, okay, how to change the column headings, how to handle the events. That is a different discussion. We'll discuss that in detail when we start that ALV idea concept. But here what I'm trying to show is whatever the code I wrote, this code is this approach is called as what? Code to data approach. Code to data approach means your business logic will be pushed to what? ANA database. At the ANA database level itself, it is going to execute our logic and generating the input. So the thing you need to understand is, I'm reading any data here. I'm not writing any select statement. I'm not writing any select statement. I have not declared any internal table. I'm not fetching the data from the database. Without writing any select query, I'm able to display the data in my what? the data in the ALV format. Let me quickly debug this. Try to understand. So basically we have only 3 steps here. See the technique. I'm creating the object for my own class. As of now, OB is what? Initial object is created. Then using my class object, I'm calling an instance method what? Generate underscore AL. This is also user defined method. Control jumps to that particular method. So when I say F5, yes, control is going there. Now you can see here what I am doing inside this method. I'm trying to call one static method called as create. I'm trying to call one static method called as create. What is the signature of this method? It is taking the database table name as input, and returning me the object of what? So and so interface. So if you see O underscore ALV, O underscore ALV is as of now what? Initial. It is not an object. So let me try to call this create method. This create method will take the table name as input, creates the object of an interface and returns that object. We are receiving that. So when I say F6 here, I'm not interested to debug the create method. You need not debug also. I'll say F6. Internally that method gets executed. Done. So I got the object here now. Earlier O underscore LV was initial. Now I got the object of the implementation class. I got the object of some implementation class. If the object is bound, okay, I can say is not initial, or I can say what is bound. Means if it is an object, using that object, I'm calling another method of the class called as what? Display. Control goes to display method. Yeah. What you are doing in the display method, you have to what? Get the object of what? Full screen mode interface. So if you see O underscore mode, as of now it is initial. When I call that full screen method, it returns with the object of so and so interface. So in the runtime, it returns the object of the corresponding implementation class. When I say F6, yes, I got the object here. Using that object, I am calling which method? Display method. Okay, I got the data. Now here the question is what? We are displaying the entire data. Na? We are displaying all the 357 records. I believe this S-flight table has got how many records? Some 357 records. Okay, so in my ALV report also, it has displayed all the what? 357 records. So every time if there are 1 lakh records, it doesn't make sense if you display that 1 lakh records. I need to display only what? Required data. So if you want to display the required data, what you will do in a normal ABAP, when you are fetching the data itself, in the select statement itself, we will write some where condition, where customer number equal to so and so, or where sales organization equal to so, like that we can filter the data. But here I have not written any select statement, so I cannot give any where class. But there is a concept called as selection conditions in the ALV IDA framework. We have a concept called a selection conditions. By using that selection condition, we can filter the data. At this stage, we don't know that, so just leave it. Okay. And apart from that, I can filter the data, and I may not be interested in all these 14 columns. No? I'm interested only some 3 columns or some 4 columns, or I want to give my own column headings. I want to interchange the positions of the columns. Again, there is a different discussion. We'll discuss it later on. But the thing we need to appreciate here is without writing any select statement, okay, just by referring to the database table, okay, I got the ALV report. So what is the logic I wrote? This logic is nothing but what? Code push down approach. Code push down approach. Like that, there are many code push down approaches. Okay, by using CDS views, by using AMDPs, by using advanced open SQL statement, we can push our code to what? HANA database, so that the entire business logic gets executed in the HANA database level, so that it will leverage the features of the HANA database, which will improve the performance of your applications. Okay, so any questions up to this point? Forget about this ALV IDA, but what I wanted to show is the way we develop the ALV reports in HANA database is different. It's different. We will not write any select statement. We'll use a framework called as ALV IDA framework, and we'll develop the ALV reports. We don't have any containers concept here, grid concept. We don't require any module full screen. We don't require any field catalog. We don't require any layout concept. The way we develop is what? Different. This code will push you to what? HANA database. Any questions, please ask me. So this is the procedure we'll follow in our what? Classical ALV reports which are referring to what? Non-HANA database. In case of HANA database, what is the framework we use? We use a framework called as what? ALV IDA. This ALV IDA will follow what? Code to data approach. What is this code to data? Pushing the business logic to what? HANA database. So why we have to push? So that we can get benefited from the features of what? HANA database. Pushing the business logic to what? HANA database. So what is the procedure I followed here? What is the standard procedure I followed here? So just observe this. The standard procedure I followed here is get the ALV object by passing what? What is that? By passing what? Database table name, or I can also pass what? DDIC view, or there is something called as CDS view. We don't know that, leave it. So as of now I'm just directly passing what? Database table name. Then what is the second step I did? Using the above ALV object, what is the next step you have to do? Get the reference of what? Full screen mode. So here in case of the first step, what is the method I called? Create method, I think. Yes. In case of second step, I called which method? Full screen method. Okay, so I called the full screen method. Then the final step is what? Using the above what? Full screen mode object. What? Display the content on the what? UI. So for this, what is the method I called? Display method. So if you see my report here, first you can observe. First I called which method? Create method, where I'm passing the table name as input. I got the reference of some interface. Using that interface object, I called another method called as full screen. Again, it is returning the object of some other interface. Using that interface object, I called the last method. What is that? Display method. So this is the framework related to what? ALV IDA. Here my agenda is just to display the data. I am not controlling that field catalog. I am not controlling that ALV toolbar. I am not performing any actions in that. In the sense, when I say actions here, now the data is displayed. Okay. If I double click on this, in our normal classical ALV, we will handle some events. No? Here also we have support for what? Events. So at this stage we don't know. So let us not focus on that. Any questions?
Thanks, Jigar.
No questions, anyone? Okay, so I've just gave a glimpse of what? One of the code push down approach. So thumb rule, okay, just try to understand. We are all ABAP consultant. What is our job related to HANA means? You write the business logic in such a way that your code should be executed inside what? HANA database server instead of application server. So far the entire code is getting executed in the application server. Instead of that, we should push our business logic to what? HANA database, so that HANA database will make use of the features of what? In-memory database, massive parallel processing, compression, column store concept. By using all those features, it will improve the performance of your application. So initially, from tomorrow onwards, what we will do is, see here. I can say for the first 15 hours or so, We will focus on what? Native HANA development. Native HANA development means we are going to design our HANA database. Okay, so sometimes the role in the project will be what? You will be working only as what? Native HANA developer. Native HANA developer means whatever the database objects related to your project, we are responsible for creating those objects and managing those objects. So to do this native HANA development, what is that we require? We require what? HANA Studio. I cannot do this native HANA development using what? SAP GUI. Compulsorily we require what? HANA Studio. So what is this HANA Studio? It is basically an Eclipse only. It's an Eclipse tool only. But inside that Eclipse tool, while installing that Eclipse tool, we need to provide what? Some plugins. We need to install some plugins related to what? HANA. And they renamed that as what? HANA Studio. Okay, HANA Studio is basically in what? Eclipse flavor only, but that Eclipse tool contains what? HANA plugins. Okay, so that's why they renamed it as what? HANA Studio. So what is this HANA Studio? It is a client tool used for what? Connecting to what? HANA database. We will directly connect to what? HANA database. Once we connect to HANA database, what we will do? We will develop the objects related to what? HANA database. So related to HANA database or related to any database, you will have some different database objects like tables, views, sequences, synonyms, triggers, stored procedures, functions, column views, all this together we call it as what? Database objects. Okay. So this tool, this HANA Studio is what? Eclipse based tool installed with what? HANA plugins, and SAP renamed it as what? HANA Studio. Okay, don't get confused. HANA Studio is what? It is what? Eclipse based tool installed with what? HANA plugins, and SAP renamed it as what? HANA Studio. Okay, so as part of this tool, we use different perspectives. Okay, let me give a glimpse of that. Yeah, see here. So when you're working in the project, your desktop will contain this. Your desktop will contain what? This particular HANA Studio. How to install this HANA Studio? It is not our headache, so don't get into those things. It is a job of what? Administrator. Okay. So this is my HANA Studio, which is installed in my what? System. Let me try to open that. So why I am trying to open that? I want to do what? Native HANA development. So let me double click on this. Done. So it is asking some workspace. Workspace is like a directory. It's a path where all the related files get stored. Okay. So this is the default workspace here. Let me not disturb that. I'll just say okay. So I'm trying to open the HANA Studio. It is a client tool used for connecting to HANA database and develop the objects related to what? HANA database. Done. It is connected. Okay. It is connected. Now you can see here. It is not yet connected, just open the tool. Now what is my agenda? I need to connect it to the HANA database now. So this is my instance of the database. I'll just right click on this. I'll say log on. Okay, I'll say log on. 1 second please. 1 second. Yeah, I'll say log on. I'll provide the what credentials related to my database. Enter the password of the SAP HANA database user. Database user. From SAP GUI, whatever we provide, those are the details of what? Application server. What is the database user? Let me provide the password. Done. Okay. So I've successfully connected to what? HANA database now. Okay. Now just observe here. As part of this tool, we use different perspectives. Try to understand the terminologies. We use different perspectives for developing the applications related to what? This HANA. Okay. So for this HANA development, SAP has provided what? Different perspective. So what exactly the perspective? Each perspective contains its own design view. Okay. So some of the perspective is here. As of now, by default, it has opened what you can see on the title bar. What is showing here? SAP HANA Modeler. SAP HANA modeler. This is called as what? Modeler perspective. Okay. So in this modeler perspective, what we can do is we can use this perspective for developing the modeling objects, like we have something called as attribute views, analytical views, okay, calculation views. So to develop that particular what modeling related objects, we use what modeler perspective. Okay, let me change the perspective here. As of now we're in modeler perspective, and you can see on the right hand corner when I'm moving the cursor here, we have what ABAP. This is called as ABAP perspective. ABAP perspective. Okay, let me click on this. When I click on this ABAP perspective, right hand corner on the top, I'll click on this. Good. You can see here the look and feel is changed. Each perspective will have its own design view. In the sense, will have its own look and feel. Look and feel. Okay, so I got a different look and feel now. Okay, so I am in which perspective now? ABAP perspective. Okay, so in this ABAP perspective, we can develop what? ABAP repository objects, and also objects related to HANA like what? CDS views and what? AMDPs. So yesterday I told you there are some developments like what? Developing CDS views, developing AMDPs. These CDS views and AMDP I can develop by using what? ABAP perspective. ABAP perspective. Okay. Then yeah, I'll switch to other perspective here. Yeah, you can see here. There is another perspective called the development perspective. Okay, so we use this development perspective for doing the native HANA development. Okay, so when I click on this HANA development, good, you can see here we have what? SAP HANA development perspective. Okay, so I can use this perspective for doing what? Native HANA development means I can create the objects, I can manage the objects related to what? Database. So this is what? Development perspective. Am I clear? Similarly, we have other perspective like what? Administrator perspective. We have something called as debugger's perspective. Okay, this is also very important. The way we debug in our GUI and the way we debug in this HANA Studio is different. So when we come to that part, we'll discuss. Okay. So you can see at the right hand corner, we have a perspective called as debugger perspective. Okay. So by using this debugger perspective, I can debug what? Stored procedures and other blocks, other programming blocks I can debug. So what I can say is HANA Studio is a client tool used for what? Connecting to HANA database and for developing what? And once you connect by using the tool, we can develop different types of what? Objects. This tool is associated with what? Different perspectives. What do you mean by perspectives? Each perspective will have its own design view, means own look and feel. So some of the perspectives are what? Development perspective. We can use this development perspective for doing what? Native HANA development. Then we have a perspective called as modular perspective. Modular perspective. This modular perspective I can use for developing the modeling objects like attribute view, analytical view, and calculation view. Then we have something called as ABAP perspective. ABAP perspective. Okay. This ABAP perspective we can use for developing the repository objects, and apart from the repository objects, we can develop what? CDS views and AMDPs. Actually, just observe here. What do you mean by repository objects means? If you go back here, just now I develop an executable program. Just now I develop an executable program and I connected to that through SAP GUI. So that the executable program comes under what? Repository object. That repository object, that executable program, I can also develop using what? HANA Studio. Anyway, I'll show that going forward. Okay. So I can use this particular what? ABAP perspective. This one. I can use this ABAP perspective for developing the ABAP repository objects and also what? Objects related to HANA, like what? CDS views and what? AMDPs. And we have another important perspective called as a debugger perspective. It is used for what? Debugging the what? Something called as stored procedures, functions, and other blocks. We can debug by using a debugger perspective. Okay, so tomorrow onwards, we'll start using this HANA Studio, and the first 12 to 15 hours will be spending on what? Native HANA development. So I'll try to create some tables. When I create the table, we'll have the option like whether you want to create the table as column store table or row store table. At that time, I will tell you the difference between column store and what? Row store. There only I will try to cover what is in-memory database, what is the HANA architecture, all those things. I'll start covering from tomorrow onwards. In the practical part only, I'll cover the theoretical concepts also. Done? So, any questions for today, please ask me. No questions, sir?
No, Sridhar, fine.
Fine, right? So, what I'll do is today I'll share this program also. Whatever I developed just now, I'll share this program, and I'll also share the vendor details. Okay, I'll share the vendor details. You can contact that vendor and we can take this HANA server on rental basis. As I told you yesterday, we will not give any server access. Okay, you need to take it from outside vendor. I'll send an email which contains all those vendor details. You can directly contact them. You can refer my name. As I told you, they'll charge some 1,000 to 1,200 per month. Okay, so since I'm going to start the practical part from tomorrow onwards, you can contact this vendor and you can take the server rental basis. No, ALV IDA is complete object oriented action. ALV IDA is complete object oriented. So we don't have function model concept here. If I use function model here, again the same issue, where that function model gets executed in the application server. Am I clear? What is our agenda? I don't want to do any execution application server. The entire execution should happen where? In the HANA database itself, so that I can leverage the features of what? HANA database. So I can develop using function model, but again, function model gets executed well in the application server. We are not using the features of HANA database. That's the reason we are going for HANA database. Compulsorily, we will be using what? ALV IDA only. Akshay, is it clear? So when you come to HANA, in HANA, when you're developing ALV report, the only solution is we have to go for ALV IDA. That ALV IDA framework will push your business logic to what? HANA database. If you are again using the function models, again there is no meaning in going to HANA database, right? Any other questions?
Hi, sir. This is Lalit.
Yes.
Uh, Sir, yesterday I actually missed the class, so can I get the video recordings from there?
I think I've shared it to everyone. Yes, others, did you got the recordings?
No, I didn't receive any mail for that,
Yes,
for the
we
recordings.
got Sridhar.
I think I've shared it to everyone.
Sri,
Lalit, I think I have not shared it for you. I'll share it today, Lalit. No problem.
Okay, okay.
uh,
Thanks, sir.
Sri, Sri was Rajgopalan. I shared my Gmail ID and ari.raj, but
No,
misinterpreted
yeah, Rajgopal. Ari dot,
dot. Yeah,
it's not underscore, na?
not underscore.
Acha, acha. Because I sent it to Ari underscore at Gmail, it is bouncing back. Okay, fine. I'll make the changes. Okay. I'll share it today, Rajgopal. Okay.
Yeah. So one more, the
Hmm.
small
Yeah,
clarification.
yeah.
This aggregation calculation related, the features in HANA.
Correct. Correct.
So we need to develop the DB side, all the calculation aggregation, and then we are
Yes.
calling into UI. Is it?
Yes. Every processing, all the calculations, simple or complex, whatever it is, everything should be done at HANA database level itself. After
Okay.
that, whatever the final data is there, that final data should be returned to the application server for display purpose. That's all. Our application server is only responsible for display, no calculations.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Done?
Done. Clear.
Yeah. So the agenda of going to HANA database is to do all the calculations at what? HANA database level. So now the question arises, if you do everything at the database level, will it not increase the load? No. In case of HANA, it has got some built-in features like in-memory database, parallel parallel processing, column store concept. By making use of these features, it will not increase any load. In case it will improve the performance. So we need not worry about the load on database server. It will take it automatically by HANA database.
Okay, sir. This our application tables own, relate with this HANA DB. Say, for example, the Mara material master or all the application tables, which is also coming under this HANA DB.
Yes, yes. What are the tables we see in our normal ECC? Okay. Not all the tables. Not all the tables. There are some tables which are also available in what this HANA database. Apart from that, this S4 HANA will introduce what? A new tables. Okay. They'll compress all the tables and they'll introduce what? New tables. As I told you one example, inventory thing. Okay. In a normal ECC, if you want to implement that inventory process, I need to scan through 26 different tables. But in S4 HANA, what I've done, they have given as mat doc. Using the table, I can perform that entire inventory process.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Others, any questions? Right. So tomorrow onwards, we'll start with what native HANA development, where I'll start using what HANA Studio. Initially, couple of days, you may not feel comfortable with HANA Studio, but after 2-3 sessions, this will become very easy because we are very new to HANA Studio. It may take some time to get used to that. Okay. Shall then? So if you don't have any other questions, I'll wind off. We'll continue tomorrow.
Bye, Sridhar.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Sure.